A very good evening to you all, and welcome again to the Ole Consulting mentorship session. Today's session is around project planning and reporting. For some of you that may have already been in the training program, you may have come across the concept of project management and why and how it is important to communication is extremely important when it comes to managing projects. And some of the communication avenues that we use in project management involves project reporting. But what is critical to project reporting is project planning, because in order to be able to provide effective reporting, we need to have an effective or sound project plan, which allows us to communicate the progress of the project. So without further ado, we'll get started by going through this session's course or content, I guess, outline of today's session. So we'll be talking about what project reporting is and why it's important. We'll go over project organizational chart. Organizational chart is understanding if I need to report to anyone in the project, I need to understand the landscape. So the organizational chart gives you an overview of the landscape of who's involved, what information needs to pass to them, why do we report to them. That's extremely important. We're also going to be talking about the project planning and the delivery roadmap, because obviously, in order to provide any kind of reports, we need to have a plan. We need to understand what needs to be done. And then the tracking leads to the reporting aspect. And then we're also going to be talking about how information is being distributed within a project, and lastly, we'll be talking about status reporting, the different types of status reporting that you, as a project manager, or even as a business analyst, what sort of reporting would you be responsible for, or what role would you play when it comes to producing the reports? Again, this is going to be a very interesting session. We want this to be very interactive. So I strongly recommend that if you do have questions, as those questions come to mind, put them in the chat. We'll have the time to go over those questions after the session. We have a Q&A section that will cover those questions. Okay, the first thing here we're going to talk about is what is project reporting and why project reporting is important. So project reporting is the act of producing formal or informal documents to communicate project status at regular intervals. So pretty much when you're looking at a project and you're thinking about how we need to get work done, your project typically will have a start and finish. In between the start and finish, the different activities involved, and for you to manage expectation and to be an effective project manager, we need to involve all the key stakeholders along the way, let them know about what's going on, how much work has been completed, what is outstanding. Also important to let them know whatever issues or risk we might come across along the way, because as much as we might talk about completing the project and we have a roadmap, there might still be some impediment or issues that we come across in the project. So communicating all that, and also keeping in mind some of the KPIs and success drivers in the project. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about KPIs when it comes to project matrix. What are some of the project matrix to keep in mind when producing your project report? Now, I think what's really important, and I always tell people, if you work in a project environment and you're talking about reporting to stakeholders, reporting to people that are important for in your project, one key thing that's extremely important to note here is the stakeholders, understanding the landscape. who's part of your organization, who am I reporting to, what's my role. I think a lot of people struggle because you find yourself in an organization, but you're not clear you don't understand the landscape. So it's really important to know the landscape. So I'm going to mouse over here. I hope everyone can see my mouse. You can give me a thumbs up if you can see my mouse. I'm mousing over here. If you can do that, that would be great. So I'm mousing over here. We have different stakeholder groups. I think I got a thumbs up somewhere. Okay, thanks so much. So we have different stakeholder groups. Starting at the top here, we have the governance committee or steering committee. The steering committee is made up within a standard organization. We're talking to the big corporate organizations like the banks, like the TD banks, like Scotiabank and all these different big banks. The steering committee is made up of the vice president, the senior vice president, and people at that level. Those are the governance level folks. Now, below the governance guys, you have the IT directors, senior managers, and director level folks. They also have things that they're doing. We're going to talk about that. So now these guys at this level they lead different departments. So maybe you might have the vice president of retail banking, for example. I'm using the banking example. You have the vice president of retail banking. You might have vice president of commercial banking, vice president of wealth management, all that stuff. Now, keep in mind, they also have directors, all these different directors. You have director of a business unit, you have a director of IT operation, you have director of business analysis, or director of project management, the PMO, director of development. So all these directors own a portfolio of projects that are associated, that are linked with all these different departments. So you might have a portfolio of project that's associated with the retail banking, portfolio of project that's associated with the wealth management. So the executives at this level, they have a stake. And then these guys are responsible for overseeing whatever the project team is doing. So keeping in mind, looking at that concept as we're proceeding, and we're looking at that concept that, okay, these guys own, they lead the departments. These guys are responsible for managing the projects that will serve this department. Now, these guys down here, especially this guy, the project manager, is responsible for managing the project. Let's just say one project, not necessarily the entire portfolio, is responsible for managing a project that has a direct result to a specific department. So you can see the trickle down effect here. Now, at the director level, the director guys report to these guys. The project manager reports to the director. So you see the relationship. So director is holding the project manager accountable to ensure that the project is going according to plan. Give me your status reports. Give me the executive presentation. I need to know what's going on, because these guys down here are breathing down on my neck. So there's that relationship. And there's also the project coordinator, the project control officer, project analyst. Really, typically, most folks that are new in project management, this is the level that they start from. Now, keep in mind, some folks have some prior experience in the managerial capacity. They can go into a project manager role. But if you're new in project management without prior managerial experience, you're probably at this level. And your role is to support the project manager in terms of keeping track of what needs to be done, updates on project RAID log. A lot of you guys have been exposed to project RAID log, update the project RAID log, update the project plan. Now, so we've talked about this group. We've also talked about, this group, and we talked about the role of the project manager is responsible for managing and delivering the project. Now, the project manager is not responsible for doing the work. These guys down here are responsible for doing the work. Now, the role they play, you have the business analyst lead, you have the IT operations lead, you have the developers, you have the QA guys. Their job is to complete the work. Now, your role as a PM is to keep track of what everyone is doing. Just keep track of what they're doing. Give me your updates. I need updates on what has been completed. I need updates on what is outstanding. That's really your role as a project manager. And if you find yourself to be a project coordinator, your role is to ensure that everything this guy needs is completed. So you're probably going to be working closely with the leads. Okay, please send me the updates. I need to prepare the deck, especially when we're presenting to these executives. We're going to talk about those reports. So I think it's really without spending too much time on this page, I think it's just important to understand the landscape, really. What this whole point is to understand, okay, what is my role? Who am I reporting to? What's the intent of the report? We've talked about the governance guys at the senior level folks, your SVPs, your VPs, vice presidents, senior vice presidents of different departments. And we talked about these director level folks are working on different portfolio projects that are associated or may have direct impact on those departments. So those executives have a stake on the value, the business value. So, and then we've talked about the project manager responsible for leading and managing, actually essentially responsible for the successful delivery of the project. So the project manager's job to hold these guys accountable, make sure that they're delivering on time. If there's anyone delaying their task, you better report that on time, or you better follow up with them, and make sure that your project coordinator, as a project coordinator, your job is to ensure that all project documentation is up to date, your raid log is up to date, your project schedule is up to date, and also you should have the ability to take meeting minutes, lead meetings, all that stuff. So that's the role of a project coordinator. But again, all these guys, the business analysts we've talked about, and this is not a business analysis session, but the BAs are responsible for requirements. They work closely with the business stakeholders and the IT guys to ensure that what needs to be done, the client's requirements are being realized. So again, all these groups work together. So we started with the landscape. So let's proceed to talk about what's next. So now that we understand the landscape, we know who we're going to be reporting to. Again, this session is around planning and reporting. So let's start with some planning activities. So essentially, let's assume at this stage, again, so we've had some sessions in the past where we talk about the concept of approaching a project from the beginning to the end. That's the project leadership session. But today we're not talking about how you start from the beginning. We're just jumping into planning. Let's say, assuming we know what the scope of work is, and we've had the kickoff meeting, which we covered in that project leadership session. Now, your next step is to have a planning session. The planning session is a workshop. Planning session, you're going to have all the different stakeholders. The group that we talked about, the working group, I'm going to go back. This group down here, these are the working group. You want them in that meeting, in the planning session. Get the working group in the planning session. Get updates on. Well, our goal here is to identify key milestones on the project. Determine interdependencies. Interdependence is always going to be critical because you know that there's always a sequence of activities that will be taking place, and the output of one becomes an input into the next one. So you need to identify those interdependencies, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit when I get through this diagram. So the point of that exercise is to come up with a delivery roadmap when we have a planning session. And now once we have that delivery roadmap, again, set up, following that meeting, the role of a project manager or project coordinator is to develop this sort of high-level roadmap, share that with the team, get their buy-in, and then from there, get the details of the activities that will roll up on each one. The teams, the BAs should tell you all their BA activities. The BAs should tell you, okay, within the next 6 weeks, these are the activities that will be completing. And then you collate all that, you talk to all the other groups, and you collate all that and put into your project plan. And that becomes the baseline, the basis for keeping track of what's going on in your project, the basis for all your reporting. It's a lot of stuff here, guys. Feel free to put in your questions in the chat. We will get through those questions. But I think this is fairly straightforward. Ideally, we'll come up with a roadmap that looks like this. We know we're starting with the requirements. The BAs tell us what the requirements are, and then we'll look at design. Now you can see this activity has a start and end date. It's an interval. diagram here, but then there's an interdependency because the outputs, this guy doesn't have to finish before we're starting the next one. So we talked about this in our previous session. I'm not going to go into that because, again, the idea is for you to understand that the planning exercise is for us to come up with the list of activities, the sequence of those activities, and figure out how, come up with our delivery roadmap. And that delivery roadmap informs what comes next in terms of our reporting. So we're going to keep moving. Again, the previous slide talks about coming up with a delivery roadmap, which is high-level milestone. We can call this a release plan, or you can call it a delivery roadmap, or something like a pipeline milestone chart, because this really captures all the key milestones in a project. Now, after capturing this, you need the team to provide the details of the activities. And once they provide the details of the activities, you're able to come up with your project schedule, your project plan, a detailed project plan. You can see, taking the business analysis activity, for example, the BAs have given us all these activities that they'll be involved with. They'll be conducting some requirement definition exercise. They'll be conducting some current state analysis. They will document the business requirement. Again, this is giving you an idea of the activities that will then inform what comes after from a reporting standpoint. So this becomes the baseline. So at every given point in time, every given week in your project, you know the activities that need to be completed, and you're having this conversation with your team to find out what's the update, what's the status, are there any issues? Is there anything outstanding? Is there anything that you need? Are there any roadblocks? Besides looking at what they're working on at the moment, it's also good practice for you to look ahead in terms of what activities are upcoming, and you want to find out what's going on with those activities or that are upcoming, and find out what's going on with those activities, if there are any issues. Now, in parallel, you're also talking to everyone on the call. You're talking to your BAs, you're talking to your QAs, you're talking to the dev guys, you're talking to everybody to understand what it is that they're doing, if they have any issues or any sort of roadblocks that may require your help. Now, everything we've talked about here, I don't know if you guys have gone as far as the SDLC. Everything we're talking about here, this model that you see here talks about requirements, design, development, testing, and implementation. So this is kind of giving you like a typical waterfall model. Now, besides waterfall, there's also agile. Again, I don't want to get too technical because I know some folks may be fairly new in the program. You haven't been there yet. You get there. It's all going to be very clear. Besides the waterfall model, there's also something called agile. Now, within the agile model, the approach is slightly different, similar but slightly different. Now, within the agile model, we don't follow that same approach as we did in the other one. Still the similar process. Within the agile model, we want to come up with breaking things into, we want to start with a product roadmap. So when I say product roadmap, we figure out what the project scope is. We're breaking it down into key components. So like this release 1, 2, and 3, and then we want to focus on release 1, and release 1 will be broken down into multiple sprint cycles, which is kind of like your mini development cycle, release cycle. So you have those release sprints, and then each sprint will now figure out the activities involved in that sprint, and the sprints can be completed within 2 to 3 weeks. So that's kind of giving you an idea of how that works. Now, within the agile model as well, we've talked about this previously. There is the utilization of tools like Jira that for tracking of progress, again, versus what I showed you with the MS project, with the project plan. This one comes with a tool that has the ability to keep track of all the activities. You have the to-dos. These are the activities that you be completing in one of those sprints. Let's say this is just sprint 1. You have all the activities they need to do. You have activities that are in progress. These are things that they're working on right now. And you see things that are in testing that maybe the development guys are working on this right now. These items are yet to be yet to start. The ones in progress are the things that are currently working on, and the ones that are in testing are the ones that the development team has completed, and the testing team, the QA team, is testing to validate that what they've done is working the way it should, and the ones that are underdone are things that have been have gone through testing and can now be considered done. Again, we have an agile session. I think that's going to be coming up soon. We actually go in depth around the concept of delivering a project in an agile framework. So again, the point of all this, and I'm saying this, I want to just take us back. A quick recap here. What we're talking about is project report. Where we want to go to is project reporting, and to get to project, to effectively report on your project, it's important to understand. It's important to understand or have clarity of your project roadmap. And we've talked about we've talked about the landscape, understanding the landscape of who you're reporting to. That's extremely important. But then also, we also understand that in order to effectively report to those guys, we need to understand the project roadmap, which is the activities involved in the project. We can see what's coming, we can see what has been completed, and we can communicate to those stakeholders what we've been able to complete, what is outstanding, and we also are able to communicate whatever issues we're having in the, during the course of the project. So that's really where we are right now. So what we're going to do next is talk about how we distribute information. How do we distribute information? How effectively can we distribute information? Is extremely important, because in order to get buy-in from people, especially those stakeholders that we talked about senior vice presidents, vice presidents. Some of these folks, a project manager might present to them. They can make or break a project manager. If a project manager presents to them and doesn't know what he's talking about, might not really end well. So just putting that out there. So you need to do your stuff. You need to know your stuff pretty much, and you need to do your job effectively. So how do we do our job effectively? Communication is key. How do we distribute relevant information to the right stakeholders? Timeline. Sometimes you might need to talk to them to have a quick call with them. Identifying the means of communication. Some stakeholders require regular communication at your weekly status meeting, at weekly communication. Some other stakeholders, like those executives, those big boys in the big boys and girls at the executive governance level, those guys, don't bother them on a weekly basis. Their reporting is on a monthly basis, and they want to just see very high level information. They don't need detailed information. Now, at the working group, those guys, you need to be on their case. You need to go into the details, the minutiae, to get into the detail of the information with those guys. So it's critical. So distribution information, there are different ways we can have your weekly status meeting, which is something that takes place on a weekly basis, or even daily stand-up if it's a agile project in an agile environment versus having a 1-hour weekly status meeting. Typically, you have daily stand-up, which is supposed to be like 15 minutes to just get what's the updates. Okay, what do we do today? What are we doing tomorrow? Okay, are there any issues? Boom, boom, boom. That's done. You also have the monthly executive meetings. Monthly executive meetings I was talking about earlier. We keep it high level. We're going to talk about all these things here. Meeting minutes, raid log. What's the importance of all these tools and these different communication channels? The first one we're going to talk about here is the daily stand-up and weekly status meeting. Now, purpose of the weekly status meeting is really to get updates. So there are two things you're doing. Your weekly status meeting allows you to take a look at where are we right now in terms of this project or the work that we're doing from last week. We know the project, we know the plan. We take a look at where we are right now. We also want to look ahead. And at the same time, while we're looking at where things, what's happened previously, where we are right now, and as we're looking ahead, it's the job of a project manager to be very detail oriented. Don't just let them give you an update and you run with it. You want to find out, you want to take a look at dependencies, you want to get clarity. Don't let people say, well, maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. You have to, why are you not sure? We need to know. We need to, do you need help? Let me help you. That's my job. I'm supposed to help you figure things out. If you have any blockers, yes, that's my job. I'll go figure it out. Do you need me to talk to somebody? I'll talk to them. Really, that's your job as a project manager. So we talked about, the goal is to take stock of what has been accomplished, what is due to be completed, and what roadblocks or challenges are anticipated. So it's very important, very, very important. So we're going to keep going. For a second, my screen wasn't moving. Okay, so I think we talked about status reporting as one way, because status reporting, that's when you have the interaction with people. You're going to talk to them about updates. You want to make sure that you're giving. So if there's any agenda, and I'm going to go back to status reporting, if there's any agenda, you want to have an agenda, first of all, when you're having your status meeting, have an agenda of things you want to cover. And now for every agenda item, make sure prior to the meeting, you've thought about, okay, this agenda item, there are maybe 3 groups involved. Maybe there's a development team involved, there's a BA team involved, and there's a designer involved, product designer involved. So you need to find out their role. Okay, for the product design, for the BAs, are you done documenting requirements for this scope of work, this agenda item? For the designer, product designer, is the design component ready? And for development, have you started? When are you going to complete? Are you clear on what has been documented? Are there any issues? Do you need the BA to clarify the requirement for you? And at the same time, you're thinking about testing. So when do you think you get this done? Okay, you get it done by Friday, or you get it done by end of day today. And you're also talking to the testing, the QA team, and like, okay, if this is done by end of day today, when will you guys start testing? So thinking about the full scope is extremely important to have an effective conversation. And that way, when you're documenting your meeting minutes, you can be sure that you've captured everything necessary. So meeting minutes are also very important. Now, when it comes to those status meetings, generally the project manager will lead those meetings. Now, as a project manager is leading those meetings, a project coordinator, project control officer, project analyst will be required or expected to document the meeting minutes. And a lot of you guys are part of the program. You've seen the style, the communication style of the meeting minutes. I think you should familiarize yourself with that communication style. Very practical, very straight to the point, and you can tell that it's very agenda focused. And you see, we use terminologies like, with regards to this deliverable, the PM indicated that the BAs should do this. You're specifying stuff and you're clear on your communication. That's extremely important. So that's a very useful style when it comes to communication. And you're also capturing your action items, and issues, decisions, risk. These are things we're going to talk about in the RAID log. So your communication, meeting minutes. So after those meetings, you document the meeting minutes and you distribute to the team, just so everyone's clear on what was discussed. Because again, people forget things. So it's always important to have you on record and share with people, everyone, You don't need to document everything that was discussed. You just need to cover the key points. That was the key takeaways. Now, the RAID log, RAID log stands for risk action items, issues, and decisions. So RAID log focuses on 4 key areas: the risk, specific events or uncertainties that could possibly occur and adversely impact your project. So risk is something, people worry about, people ask question, what's the difference between a risk and an issue? A risk is something that could potentially happen. So we have the opportunity, there's an opportunity to mitigate the risk. If it's a risk, there's a risk that we might not complete the project on time because we don't have enough resources. So mitigation will be, let's add more resources to the project. Now, issue on the other hand is we will not be able to complete this milestone because, that has happened because of the same reason. So there's an issue, the project is going to be delayed, that's an issue. So other things can be covered. Action items are key takeaways that people need to take out of the meetings. When you're in a meeting, someone says, "Okay, I'm going to follow up with the business group to get updates on the SOP." So that's an action item. Make sure you document that because people forget. Next time you're like, "Oh, you're supposed to do this." So it's always important. And decisions happen when the team makes a decision. Maybe someone identify a good practical way of getting things done in the project, and the team decides to implement a new way of doing things. Document that so that you have that for the record. And then status reporting, obviously, a huge part of what we're talking about is talking about status reporting. So meeting minutes, one way of getting communication across. When you have those status meetings is one way. Meeting minutes, another way of getting information across to your team. But status reporting is also important because status reporting captures high level or not. I mean, there's different types. There's the weekly and the monthly status reporting, but status reporting helps capture maybe what the team did in the week in one snapshot. So, all those meetings that you guys have had, at the end of the day, the status report just captures, okay, this was what was completed. This was what was items completed as planned, deliverables completed as planned, deliverables not completed as planned, key issues, upcoming milestones, decisions, risk, whatever the case may be. That's captured in your status report. It gives you an idea of what's going on, where the project is overall. Now, executive meetings take place on a monthly basis. Executive meetings is done, it's an avenue for the project manager and project manager essentially to meet with those executives and some of the directors or senior managers to present to them what the team has done in the past month. And overall is supposed to showcase the overall health of the project. How well is the project going? Are we meeting our target? Are there any issues? You're giving them a report, which is done with using PowerPoint presentation decks. So you're going to go, it's a formal meeting. And it's really essentially it's a style when it comes to the regular status reports. Often that's done on a weekly basis and really sometimes very detail oriented versus the monthly one, which is very high level focusing on key milestones and their statuses. And we're going to showcase some examples right now. So this is a sample status report. I think some folks in the program should have seen this because there's a deliverable associated with this one. And the key takeaway here is that you just want to capture information. I don't know, this can change, can be depending on the template you're using. But some of the key things you want to keep in mind is items completed as planned. So this week we've completed what's the name of the deliverable, what's the description, and then things that were not completed. You also want to identify issues and then deliverables for next week. So this one is focusing on that specific, on a week in, week out basis. So that's the status reporting, the weekly status report template. And then you have some of the executive one. This one here talks about very high level status updates. Now we're looking at deliverables here. The deliverables here are more like work streams. In this case, they're like key work packages or work streams. And we can see here the template here talks about implementation dates, how much of it has been completed, what's upcoming. In this case, there's nothing upcoming because it has been implemented. Some of the other ones were saying, okay, this is in testing, 86% complete, and then you're looking at what's upcoming. So very high level is a snapshot. This is more like a program report and is a snapshot for the executive to see, okay, what the status is of all its key items are. And the other thing you keep in mind here is the overall health of this project. Here it talks about health status reporting, which we're going to talk about next, is showcasing how well your project is doing using key indicators such as time, scope, and cost. And it's telling you that in this case, the project is green. That means everything is good. We'll talk about the different indicators of your health, shortly. So when it comes to project health status reporting, now the intent here, is to, showcase how well we're doing in the project. And the project health is really, most organizations use this yellow color, use this color code to ascertain the current health of the project. So for example, if it's red, it means that things are bad. You don't want to go to the executive meeting with a red status. They're going to be nervous, and you better have answers. So you don't want to be red, because really, if a project is red, someone's probably dropped the ball, and all fingers are still going to point to the project manager, unless maybe it's a situation where there was a resource constraint or there was no money or something dramatic happened. If a project is red, then as a PM, you have to take responsibility somewhere. If it's yellow, it means that, okay, maybe something's going on. Maybe there's a delay in a key milestone, in a major milestone, but doesn't have an impact on the project delivery date. Now, if it's red, maybe there's a delay, but that delay would affect the project. Maybe project was supposed to be delivered in September. Now we're saying the project will be delivered in December. Now the stakeholders will be upset because they were expecting that this project will go to market and they can start, getting some results. So if it's delayed, they're not going to be happy about that. So we're talking about, all these different all these different indicators as to what the project health is. Really, this is an exercise that'll be done between the project manager and the project coordinator. As a project coordinator, often will make recommendations or have a tracker, project health status tracker that keeps track of anything that could affect your, the triple constraints, which we're going to talk about next. Now, the triple constraints here for this project health is time, scope, and cost. So if there's anything that's affecting your project timeline, which is, the schedule or project plan, your project timeline, that could delay you from achieving a key milestone, then we need to have that conversation. We might make the project yellow or red, depending on the impact. If it's a significant impact that could impact the delivery date, yes, we make it red. If it doesn't impact the delivery date, but we know that it's something critical, we can make it yellow. And the other thing, same goes to scope. So scope, if there's a new scope item, that could impact the project timeline. So we added this new scope item. So some people talk about scope creep. Scope creep is the uncontrolled changes in your project. So if there's a new scope item, sometimes it may or may not affect your project timeline. Maybe it's a minor scope item, but now if it's a major scope item that's affecting your project timeline, then we need to have that conversation, similar conversation. And same thing goes to cost. So, and the reason why they call triple constraints is now a new scope item could increase your timeline and at the same time increase your cost. So is a triple constraint. A change in one can affect the other. For example, if we reduce the cost of this project, it could mean that we may not be able to complete. If we reduce our budget, it means that we may not be able to complete the work. And it means that, or even, it could also affect our timeline because we may not have enough resources to get the job done on time. So that's why it's called triple constraint, because change in one affects the other. So the triple constraint informs your overall health. So when looking at your key indicators that affect your project health, those are the triple constraints. So we're almost at the tail end here. The last bit I'd like to talk about is dashboard reporting. Dashboard reporting is the same thing as your executive report, but it's just a different fancy way of capturing snapshot of the overall health of a project in a snapshot. Like we're talking about capturing everything, the key indicators, the milestones, the perimeters, everything concerning your project. And we have a sample here, a sample dashboard here. So this is a sample dashboard. Overall here, we see the project health is yellow. And we can see, can tell us that I can see scope is yellow, schedule is yellow. My, first look at this, what I'm saying is there's a new scope item that's been added to the project, which has increased the timeline. Although cost-wise, we can still afford it. That's why your project is yellow. And obviously, over here, we're also giving like a status summary, which is an indication of why the project is currently yellow. You need to have that summary. And then there's some other key milestones or key work streams associated with the project. We can see those work streams that are really making the project yellow. So we can see, and then when you look at this, it says data and IT is yellow due to downstream effect of delay in contract assessment. So we're telling there's an impact, there's a delay somewhere that is leading to, that status, So again, there's a lot going on here. We also capture some risk. We also capture some issues. At the same time, we're capturing high-level milestones of the different work streams. You're seeing the overall status. This is where we are right now. We know what's coming. We know what has been completed. And it just kind of gives you an idea of your overall project status and project health in a snapshot. So that's pretty much what we're here to discuss today. And I know we still have, I'll just, trying to speed up so that we have enough time for comments, questions. So guys, just to recap, we started by talking about why it is important to have a project, to talk to why project status is important, the reason why we produce project status report, and then we went into understanding the landscape, which is we understand that there's some executives, these are some big players, these are guys that are funding the project. And then we moved on to, talk about the executive, talk about the director level, senior management folks that are responsible for the portfolio. And then we now talked about the project manager who's responsible for delivering the project. And then, their role and their interaction with other team members, the project coordinator, the business analysts, the dev guys and their team. And then we transition from there to talking about the planning session, how you're going to have the planning session to identify key milestones, come up with your delivery roadmap. We talked about all that good stuff, right? And we also talk about the concept of agile versus waterfall and how your project planning and roadmap activities are different depending on the framework. And that led us to going into how we distribute information, the different ways we distribute information, your weekly status report or daily stand-up, again depending on the delivery model. We talked about the regular status reporting, which could be a weekly status reporting, detail oriented. We talked about the executive meetings, executive presentation, monthly status report, very high level in nature for the executives. And we also talk about health status reporting, which gives you the indication, you talk about the key indicators, your time, scope, and cost that helps determine the overall health of your project. And finally, we talk about the dashboard. So guys, this is it. Obviously, it's a lot to digest. It takes time. I know it takes time. I'm going to answer some. I think we have one question in the chat at the moment. Just going to take a look at that question from Dotun. Is that a question or is that okay? What other risk action can a PM take or project take aside mitigation? So well, when it comes to responding, that's a great question. So now we're talking about risk and we're talking about the RAID log in this case. The RAID log is a tool used to keep track of all some of the activities, day-to-day conversations that take place. And while the RAID log is really important because a lot of conversations take place in between. We just need to keep track of them, who's responsible for what. There's so many moving parts. So, and one of the RAID log items is a risk. So risk, when it comes to responding to a risk, now you can either accept the risk, you can defer the risk, or you can transfer the risk, or you can mitigate it. Now, the rule of thumb in project management, and the reason why I say you can accept the risk, so maybe there's a risk that the project might be delayed due to resource constraints. A proposed mitigation plan is to add more resources. That's a no-brainer, right? That's a no-brainer. Oh, let's add more resources. Let's hire more people. But now the organization saying there's no funding, we don't have money. Well, I guess that's what's going to happen. We're just going to accept the risk, so the project's going to be delayed. So that could happen. That's a scenario where we're accepting the risk, and there might be other scenarios where we have a mitigation plan. So that's another way to look at it. I see there's another question here from Richard. Who establishes this kind of tunnel planning diagram on the 4th slide? Okay, let's go back to the 4th slide. So are we talking about the org chart? Is this what you're talking about?
No, back again, please.
Okay, this one.
Yes.
Okay, so okay, if the PM, I think there's some technical aspect of it that maybe. Okay, so well, essentially, now when we look at it, back in the day, before the old concept of virtual work, people working virtually, when you have a planning session, it's typically a whiteboard session. There's a whiteboard, we draw the line, we're like, okay, this is our starting point. Requirements, we're drawing everything you see on the diagram, we draw it on the board. Now, once we come up with that roadmap, we've established where our starting point is, we've identified the interdependencies, and we figure out the end point, which is the delivery, the implementation. Essentially, the project manager is responsible for creating something like this, a pipeline document, which is a useful communication tool for people, anyone that can just take a look at where the project is, who's responsible, what are the activities, what are the key milestones. Now, a project manager might be responsible, but if I'm the project manager and I have a project coordinator, I'm going to delegate to the project coordinator to take a stab at it. Hey, can you quickly draft something? And we'll take a look at it. If I like what you've drafted, I'll say, great job. If there are areas of improvement, I will advise on how they can improve it. So it's something that you should, as a project manager or as a project coordinator, you should be able to develop something like this. And as a matter of fact, there's something like this. There's a deliverable similar to this in the program that you're responsible for producing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And that's a great question, by the way. That's a really good question. Okay. All right. Well, any more questions, comments? We have seven more minutes. we've covered quite a bit. I think that there should be more questions. You know, and
Yes,
welcome. Yeah.
yes. My question is about where can I find this presentation again if I want to watch it once more time?
Okay, so I believe the team will share the recording after this. Well, I guess at some point, maybe not, perhaps not after the session, but I believe it will be shared at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I believe we have 5 more minutes. You know, guys, if there are any comments, any questions, or if you just want to comment on what you've seen, what you're understanding, perhaps, you know, typically what I like to do, but I just hate to put people on the spot. I like to do a round table and just checking on people, say, okay, any key takeaways, any comments? If you can comment, fine, just comment. If you can't comment, just give us a thumbs up. And we're just gonna do that because I think we're about 19 people on the call. We're just gonna quickly run through and see if anyone has any comments or any questions, or anything that just comes to mind, you know, as we wrap up. So I'm gonna start with, as I see on my screen here, I'll probably start with Busayo. Well, maybe not. Busayo is a co-host, so maybe not. Let's start with Arthur. Perhaps Arthur, you have any comments, or you just want to give us a thumbs up, and then we'll move on. And as we call you, if you don't respond, we'll move on to the next person. Okay, thanks. Okay, I see lots of thumbs up coming up. Nobody wants to speak, so I'm just gonna assume. Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. No comment, Arthur. Thank you. I'll probably just gonna keep it moving here. Hi, Tade. Do you have any comments, any questions? Oh,
No, not at all. I think I covered most of this earlier, so I'm good.
Okay, excellent.
Good
Thanks for
evening,
that.
everyone.
Yeah, good evening to you too, hi, Tade. Chooks, we're getting thumbs up everywhere. Chooks, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I've given a thumbs up before, but I think what would be of interest to know is what is daily activities like in a PMO for the project coordinators. What's their day-to-day activities like? If you can just provide a little bit of insight.
Okay, that's a great question. Obviously, when it comes to day-to-day activity, it varies on the role. I mean, really, frankly speaking, depends on the role. But the typical activity day-to-day from a project coordinator or project manager, you look at meetings. You know, you probably want to take a look at your calendar. There might be meetings that are taking place. There are also activities from previous day. Maybe you might need to update, you might need to document meeting minutes from the previous day or from previous week, or you need to produce a status report, produce a report. You might need to update your project financial. You know, there's a huge Excel spreadsheet or even other tools that are used to manage project financials. And if your project, I'm just throwing a lot of things out there. And if your project is an agile project, you might need to update Jira to, you know, ensure that things are up to date. Update your project plan. You know, again, it varies, depends on, there's so much you can do. There might be some ad hoc requests for you to create a change request, update your RAID log, update your change management log. So there's a lot, but a lot in between. There's so many meetings. There's also you responding to emails because there's going to be a lot of requests coming at you. There's also going to be you maybe updating the project SharePoint project document. As you document those meeting minutes, update your RAID log, you need to save them in SharePoint. So there's a lot. This is just, but amongst other things, those are like the, you know, key ones that you find in most places. Okay, so we have okay. Yeah, so we have a David B. I'm not sure if you giving us a thumbs up, if you want to comment.
Hi, Ade, I give you a thumbs up. Great work. I'm just sitting in listening. I'm running a course with you and your team as well. So great job, man. Great job.
Excellent. Excellent. Appreciate that, David. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to keep it moving. I have Femi. Femi, you have any questions, comments? Okay, so we're gonna keep it moving here. We have someone iPhone. Actually, we have multiple iPhones here. There's an iPhone regular and there's an iPhone Pro Max. I'm not sure who those folks, if you wanna comment or give us a thumbs up. If not, we're just gonna keep it moving.
Hi, Hade. This is Dami. I believe I'm iPhone Pro Max. Hi, Busaya as well. I believe I have no comments. Everything was well detailed. You explained everything to the T, so great job. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Dami. Yeah, thanks for the comment. Okay, so we don't know what the other iPhone is, so we're just gonna keep it moving. There's Latif. I see Mary, you gave us a thumbs up. We also have Olumide. Again, overall, just in the interest of time, I thought we're gonna be able to do this round table, but I appreciate everyone on the call today. We thank you for joining. Again, this is one of the mentorship sessions. We do have upcoming, there will be the SDLC, there will be the Agile. We've had that before. Again, these are like, we repeat them, and at some point we'll go back to the project leadership one, which I really like that one because it provides clarity in terms of how you approach a project, how you go about it, and how you can, facilitate some form of leadership when it comes to project management. So again, once again, thank you so much, everybody. This has been a great session, and wish everybody a very good evening, and be well, stay safe, and bye for now.